bienvenidos a todos al webinar de Intro to Blockstack. La idea de este webinar es que conozcan la plataforma, conozcan el proyecto, y la verdad es que es algo muy interesante que está proponiendo el ecosistema blockchain, donde ustedes van a poder crear sus aplicaciones descentralizadas, tener los datos protegidos de alguna forma en una plataforma descentralizada, y pues es el primer acercamiento que tenemos con la comunidad de Latinoamérica. El webinar en esta ocasión va a ser en inglés, va a ser llevado por dos personajes de Blockstack, que son pues, de Production Partner, que es Shan, y Hank Stoever, que es el Engineer Partner también del equipo oficial de Blockstack. Nos van a estar acompañando con este webinar, y también nos va a estar acompañando Daniel Páramo, que él es el fundador de Intelligent Solutions, como moderador. Los invitamos también a que hagan sus preguntas por medio del chat. Traten de participar mucho, que es el objetivo de hacer webinars. No queremos que esto se vea como un video de YouTube grabado nada más y que estén ahí nada más escuchando. Si en algún momento surge alguna duda, si quieren saludar, si quieren complementar o interrumpir para agregar algo en el transcurso de todo el webinar, lo pueden hacer. Ahí Sean, por ejemplo, ya está levantando la mano, y Jorge también está levantando la mano. Camila, que está detrás de todo esto, nos va a estar ayudando habilitando el micrófono, y los estamos teniendo ahí en mente. Entonces, rápidamente, para los que no nos conocen, este webinar lo estamos organizando en la Ciudad de México con el proyecto de Blockchain Academy México, que nosotros nos dedicamos a crecer y incentivar el ecosistema blockchain a través de cursos presenciales, eventos, y también estos son parte de nuestras iniciativas para volvernos una academia digital y llevar otros proyectos a la Ciudad de México, a Latinoamérica o a otros países. Entonces ya tuvimos un webinar hace unas cuantas semanas, o ya un mes, me parece, con el proyecto de Zeppelin. También hemos estado haciendo webinars de fundamentos de seguridad. Ahora les estamos presentando el proyecto de Blockstack, y también poco a poco iremos grabando todos nuestros cursos que ahora damos presenciales en la Torre BBVA, pero los vamos a estar teniendo digitalmente para que lleguemos a todas las comunidades que les interesen pues, tener todo esto. Posteriormente los invito a que se queden al final de la charla, al final del webinar, donde hablaremos acerca de cómo tener un bonus de $50 que estaremos dando a todos los que se registren o suban su aplicación a la plataforma de Blockstack. Nada más tiene que llenar ahí unos campos, unos cuantos registros. Vamos a decir paso a paso todas las especificaciones al final. Entonces, no se desconecten, quédense con nosotros. Y pues le doy paso a Daniel Páramo, el fundador de Intelligent Solutions, para que presente a nuestros presentadores e iniciemos con el webinar. Hola Daniel, bienvenido.
Hola Marco, muchas gracias. Bienvenidos todos. Me llamo Daniel Páramo. Esta introducción la voy a hacer en inglés, así que van a escuchar mi inglés. A ver. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. First, my name is Daniel Páramo. I am the founder of Intelligent Solutions, where our sole goal is to take digital transformation globally, focusing on different technologies like blockchain. We focus on consulting and helping businesses benefit from these technologies. It is my pleasure to have worked with BAM and Blockstack to bring you this webinar. I believe that we are in a fast-paced environment where there are so many projects and so much to learn that we need to start discovering the best projects and the best teams and focus on those. With that said, I believe Blockstack is one of those projects. I want to thank Blockchain Academy Mexico for focusing on teaching blockchain to the Latin American community, closing the gap between having an idea and actually having the right tools to implement it. Lastly, I will be acting as the moderator today, so if anyone has any questions, please type it on the panel or raise your hand and we'll get to you as soon as possible. From the team Blockstack, we have Shan Ditkoff. Shan is a production partner at Blockstack. Shan is on the front lines of decentralized application development with a background in private equity, investment banking, and the military. Shan is passionate about driving the creation, growth, and expansion of application ecosystems through his role with Blockstack PBC. And then we have Hank. He is an engineer partner at Blockstack, working on developer tools and consumer-facing products. He previously worked as an engineer to a variety of startups, including as lead developer of 4 startup digits. Now, just take it away, Shan and Hank. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Hola a todos. Let me get the slides up and we'll begin. So, can everyone see that? Perfect.
Yes, yeah. Your camera is off. Can you refresh it?
Sure.
Thank you.
That better?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for being here today. Are we good, Marco?
I see it black.
Oh really? I see him good, Marco.
Okay.
Perfect. Can you see the slides, Daniel? I just want to make sure those are up.
I can. I don't know if Nadia his camera is on.
Perfect.
I see him good. Nice.
Perfect. So thank you all for being here today. Today, Hank and I are going to tell you a little bit about Blockstack and the decentralized application ecosystem that's being built on top of us, as well as how you can also create your own decentralized applications built on top of Blockstack. So to begin, what is Blockstack? Well, simply put, we see ourselves as part of the next wave of computing. You may have heard this referred to as the decentralized era of computing, Web 3.0. I like to call it either the can't be evil era of computing or the user-centric era of computing. Can't be evil is a slogan that we've used for quite a while, and it refers back to a phrase that Google used to have when they were first coming up, which was don't be evil. Their goal was at every decision they made to ask themselves the question of, are we doing something evil and not do that. The problem with that is you're still trusting a company, Google in that case, to not be evil. This new era of the internet and what Blockstack enables is a world where instead of us building systems and promising we won't be evil, rather at every decision we make, all the design philosophies when we're building our platform, rather we build it in a way such that we can't be evil. The end goal is to be able to hand our technology to our worst enemies and still feel perfectly safe using it. And this new model of the digital world, Web 3.0, the decentralized web, it flips the current Web 2.0 model on its head. Users bring their data to applications and services. This world is private and opt-out by default. And I call it user-centric because as an end user, it really enables me to own my own identity and data and take that where I want and use it how I want. Blockstack fits into this new wave of computing as the easiest way to create scalable applications where users own their own identity and data. There are three main components that kind of make up our stack that I'll get into shortly. But briefly, this is a bit about the history of Blockstack. One of the things you'll notice that separates us from a lot of the projects in this space is the fact that we've been around for quite some time. We were actually started in 2013, went through Y Combinator in 2014, and have slowly built up over the past years. What I really want to emphasize with this slide is that we have a culture and continue to have a viewpoint of solving the hard technical challenges first before creating a product and going to the market to scale. And similarly, we've been very careful with the partners we've chosen along the way, whether it's Y Combinator, Union Square Ventures, and so on. Now, the one thing this slide is missing, which is quite exciting, is there should be a line in 2019, right around today, that mentions that we were recently the first project approved in history by the SEC to do a token offering through Regulation A. And we really believe that the reason we were able to accomplish that and become the first in history is because of this long, careful approach to development and to evolving both the product and the project. One of the other ways we're quite a bit different than other projects in the space is how we see this very innovative technology, blockchain technology, and the best practices that go along with using it. Our co-founder and CEO, Munib, along with our co-founder, Ryan, made the call quite a few years ago that blockchains are not and should not be used as general purpose databases, nor are they and should they be used as general purpose computers. Blockchains provide a very powerful innovation to be able to establish global peer-to-peer state, but there's a trade-off in there. And you want to see to what degree can we minimize this trade-off while still maximizing for that innovation. Similarly, we look at smart contracts in somewhat of the same light. And Hank will get into the details of this a little bit later. But smart contracts are not something that should be used for every action in an application or on a network. Rather, they're a very powerful scalpel that should be used in very specific instances. And I believe they're best used in places where trust is the barrier to scalability. And so these design philosophies and cultural philosophies that have been ingrained in the project are reflected in the platform and how we expose it to both end users and developers. From an end user perspective, when I register a Blockstack identity, I get three things. In my case, I register Zan.id. I get to own that name, the human readable name, at a fundamental protocol level that is stored at the blockchain layer. Attached to that identity, I also get a private encrypted storage bucket where I can store all my data and keep that safe and secure and under my ownership. Hank will get into this, but we enable me as an end user to really store my data wherever I want, whether that is repurposing cloud-based storage providers as dumb drives to store encrypted data in, such as Amazon Web Services, Google Drive, really anything. I can also store my data in fancier, newer distributed storage services such as IPFS, Filecoin, or I can store them in a server I have in my closet that I'm hosting myself, or all three. The last piece I get is a Bitcoin and Stacks wallet. And so with those three pieces, I now have everything I need to be a full-class digital citizen in this new world. And now, if this is what an end user gets from Blockstack and from our platform, how do we enable developers to build applications that can leverage those pieces so easily? Well, one of the main ways is we enable developers to leverage our platform in a scalable way for applications because of, in a lot of ways, the philosophies I just talked about. Because of those, applications built on top of Blockstack can leverage commodity web infrastructure and carry out, in order to carry out all of their business logic. Because of this, they can scale to levels that we're used to today when we're using current Web 2.0 applications like Twitter, for instance. These applications run locally on users' machines and plug into user-run APIs. One of the most important points is developers can use existing frameworks and languages that they're already familiar and comfortable with, such as JavaScript, and don't have to deal with the constraints and challenges that can come with having to code directly on chain. This structure provides some important guarantees kind of for the future too, in that developers can build decentralized applications, products and services that, as I mentioned, can scale to the same levels as apps today. So we are not going to stand in the way of your success. And also importantly, users that have IDs will always be able to use the software. And as a result, you can't have your user base taken away or throttled from you. It's still early days, and so these guarantees are slightly less impactful right now, but they become exponentially more meaningful as this world scales. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hank to give you a more technical view under the hood of how we actually enable all of this.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Great introduction.
There we go.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, as he said, I'm going to dive a little bit more into the technical side and also just a little bit more of an overview, especially from a developer's perspective, as well as a user's perspective, how Blockstack is different, especially from a traditional app. And I'm going to be talking about that in the context of a typical app's anatomy. So every app, has a lot of the same components. There's the design, there's the code that provides all the logic, there's the database that ends up storing everything, and then there's the user base. All apps have that in some way or another. Hey, Dan, would you mind unmuting real quick? Sorry, some typing noise. And some traditional apps use these components in different ways from how Blockstack works. And I think by highlighting that, we can explain better how Blockstack is different. So today, users are really locked into the app's database. There's no data portability. There's no real interoperability with other apps, especially by default. And so there's a lot of lock-in, and it's one single silo for every app. And so at scale, you have all these different applications, all with a totally different user base and all with completely separate databases. So there's no interoperability. For users as well as developers, it's actually a worse experience. Everything's totally separate, siloed, disconnected, and especially data and experience is all locked in. And so as a user, there's a bunch of problems. So I mean, there's onboarding fatigue, which means really they're sick of logging into a million different apps and having all these different accounts and passwords that they have to manage. Their data is totally at risk, and they're really dependent on the application developer itself. They don't have any control over what the application developer can do, whether the app can sell their data, or whether they'll lock down their data and not allow it to be used in other apps. Or if the app shuts down, typically you lose all data. You really just don't have any rights in that respect. And as a developer, there's problems as well, because especially from a security perspective, you better make sure that all of your data and all of your code is completely secure and free from any vulnerabilities. Because if you had your data leaked, you're directly impacting your users. You're probably going to lose a lot of them. You're going to absolutely lose their trust. And there's actually a bunch of work that you have to build in the first place, even just setting up the database, making sure that it scales. This is something that you completely have to control. Whereas in Blockstack, there's a separation of that. And so you don't have to build the onboarding layer. You don't have to build the user storage layer. And so, by lining that up, I can explain a little bit differently how our approach is different. And so we think that, DApps are really the new app. We think that this is not just, it's not just a good principle to have to support digital rights and to support privacy and to support data portability. We think it's a better experience for users and developers themselves. And at Blockstack, we have two major aspects of our platform that work together to really change this paradigm. One is identity, and the other is data. Zan definitely touched on these quite a bit, so I won't go into too much detail, but it's really these two key parts of the platform that, especially as a developer, you'll be utilizing the most, and it really unlocks this new potential. So the identity layer, as Zan mentioned, this is basically a way of using a public blockchain to create globally unique names. So I myself, I own the username hankstoever.id. I can use this to log into all sorts of different apps. And when I log into different apps, it's kind of like an OAuth type of flow. What I mean by that is, if you've ever used login with Google or login with Facebook, the experience is very similar. Where essentially you start out on the app, you click something like maybe a button that says login with Blockstack, and then you're sent over to your Blockstack browser, which is where you manage your identity and all of your data. And then you essentially approve the authentication process. And then you come right back to the app. And the output of that is you're logged into the application. The application has a unique key pair that it can use for encrypting data, and signing data, and storing data. And you can rest assured that the application only gets the information that it needs. It can't access things that are used with other applications or any of your private personal information. It's a nice separation of concerns that makes it easier for the user and the developer. And then we have the data layer. We call this Gaia, and Gaia is really like a user's personal data locker. So a user can choose where they run their Gaia hub. Typically, it's using cloud infrastructure like AWS or Google Cloud. But there's other options as well. You can use IPFS. You can just store it on your own server, maybe that you run at home. And Gaia is a key value store. And so what I mean by that is that it's not something like a SQL database such as MySQL, and it's not a NoSQL database like MongoDB. This provides a ton of flexibility. So as a developer, you can store any type of value you want. That could be JSON. It could be just plain text. It could be multimedia like songs or pictures or videos or presentations. It's really flexible in that regard. And it allows this data locker to really be the single hub where everything lives. And every app's data is sandboxed into different, essentially folders that we call buckets. So as a user, you have a different bucket for every app that you use. This creates a nice separation. So, for example, if I'm using my Notes app and I want to keep all that data private, well, I can also use this Photos app, for example, and I can rest assured that neither of those apps will have access to my other data unless I explicitly granted that permission. So now I'm going to get into our SDKs.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. I have Oscar Lloyd Andrade here that he wants to ask a question. Is it okay with him just a little bit of time so he can ask?
Sure.
Oscar, Camila, ¿le puedes dar la palabra a Oscar, please?
I think we have the Q&A section also on the website.
Yeah. Maybe, let's see if Oscar is online. Oscar, ¿nos puedes escuchar? Oh, there's a question. So can Blockstack PC store images, videos on Blockstack blockchain at a regular cost? And the second question, is Sdks going to be mineable through proof of work or proof of stake? And third, do you work with gas or RAM, or who pay for the computing power for running the apps?
Sure. Well, so so one thing that I would note is that for the first question, users do not store any data on a blockchain. That was one of Zan's original points, was that we believe that it is not appropriate to store all data on a blockchain. It just doesn't make sense from a cost standpoint, from a decentralization standpoint, and even from a privacy standpoint. Blockchains are really for public data. So why would I want to store my private information on a blockchain? And so that's why we have the concept of personal data lockers. So these are not on-chain. These are typically cloud-hosted data storage areas. And so it shifts the question. So it's much faster. It's much more inexpensive. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Can you see the second one?
Yeah, so the second question is about how Stacks is mineable. We have a method called proof of burn, and I kind of want to maybe save that for later, since I think it's kind of a bigger concept.
Okay.
And then similar about how we pay for computing power on the network. I think let's just say that towards the end. I'm going to speak more to the blockchain layer. And if you wouldn't mind, I think it would be best to just save all questions for after the slides, because I might cover some of that information, and it'll really allow us to just kind of group all questions into once instead of breaking up the flow of the slides.
Okay, sounds good, Hank. So continue, and then we'll save all these questions for last. Okay.
Yeah, come back to it. Yep, no problem. Thank you.
All right, man.
Cool. So yeah, back to the slide that we're on. We have a bunch of libraries and SDKs that developers can use to build apps on our platform. In the bottom right, we have some of the different languages that we support. The most common library that people use is Blockstack.js. This is a client-side JavaScript SDK that you can use to build websites and web apps built on Blockstack. But we also have iOS and Android SDKs for building on mobile platforms as well as React Native. And they all have a very similar API. So the methods that you'll be seeing here are pretty much the same methods you could use elsewhere. So probably the first thing that you would do when you're building your Blockstack app is implement authentication with Blockstack. And I think this really highlights just how easy it is to get building on Blockstack. In your application, when the user wants to actually go through that authentication flow I was mentioning earlier, they just call redirect to sign in. And this will send them to the Blockstack browser, which is where they manage their identities and they can approve the authentication request. And then they're redirected back to your application. Once that's all done, all you have to do is call load user data, and this will give you the information that the users provided you, like maybe their name, definitely their username, some information around their storage, maybe some extra profile information like an avatar. So really it's just these, a few lines of code and you could be totally set up with Blockstack Auth. So later on, you're probably going to want to use storage. So when you want to save and fetch data that's been stored using Gaia, we have two main methods for you, get file and put file. And so as I said, these are key value stores. So you can store JSON, but also images, etc. And to fetch some data, you just call get file, and you pass essentially the key or the file name for where that data is stored. Now, behind the scenes, there's a ton of stuff going on. It's looking at the logged in user's information to see where exactly they do store information, because the way that our personal data, our Gaia hubs are run is that they could be hosted in any server around the world. So our SDKs do all the hard work of figuring out where the user has configured that. And then it even decrypts that information for you, because by default, all data is client-side encrypted. And so using private keys that never leave your device, our SDKs will fetch this data and decrypt it for you. So as a developer, it's really just one line of code to do all of that for you. Later on, maybe you update this data and you want to save it. You just call put file. You give it the key, you give it the value or sort of the data that you want to pass in. And once again, there's a bunch happening behind the scenes where we're encrypting this data, and then we're determining where to save it. We're constructing the correct, API requests to be sending to Gaia to prove that it's you. And at the end of the day, it's really just, as a developer, you're using one or two lines of code, but behind the scenes, it's probably, potentially thousands of lines of code just to do these things for you. So we've really tried to make it simple. So yeah, let's go into the app layer of your actual DApp. And this slide really gets into some of the behind the scenes work. And I know there's a lot going on here, but I think it just helps illustrate sort of the entire architecture of the Blockstack system. We can maybe start at the bottom. And so when a user registers a username on the Blockstack platform, they're making an on-chain transaction, and they're saying, I want to register this name with this metadata. Then Blockstack core nodes can parse out that information. They can say, okay, here's the user, here's what username they provided, is this valid? And then they store some records around where the user has configured their Gaia hub to live. And then later on, any Blockstack node can be queried so that if I can, as an application, say something like, hey, I have the user Hank, where does he store his data? And the Blockstack node has that information, it can respond it to me. And then we can, as an application, I can store data seamlessly, even though, these Gaia hubs are in many different servers all over the place. So now we can get into some future things. And so smart contracts are one of the newest aspects of the Blockstack platform. It's not yet on our mainnet, but we already have a lot of the bits and pieces written in terms of the code. We have an SDK that you can use to test it out, and we're really excited about it. And our main approach to smart contracts is to be, is that we've learned from what a lot of other smart contract platforms have already done and some of the issues that they've ran into, especially from smart contracts that users have developed. And so on the slide here is a bunch of examples of, different technical issues that are kind of built into the core foundation of, for example, Ethereum. And these are things that we've learned from and we've decided to avoid, so that as a developer, you can be much more confident in your smart contract working in the way that you decide or that you intend to, and that there's no unintended side effects. And so we've done a few things, out of that. So we do not have a Turing complete language. And so, this is a more limited programming language than what Turing complete means. But this is really good because as a developer, this means that you can be absolutely sure that the code that you've written is going to execute in the way that you desire. It mitigates completely issues like the halting problem, all these really hard computer science problems that come from Turing completeness. We're deciding to avoid that. And there's some other technical details like re-entrant functions. And then we do not have a compile step. So in Ethereum, there's bytecode that is stored on the chain. Ethereum nodes don't actually run or store Solidity code. As a developer, you write Solidity code, and then you compile it into bytecode, which no human can really easily read. But that's how things are stored on nodes. So it's hard to have a true understanding of what exactly is this code going to do. And this leads to a lot of issues like not being able to know exactly how much gas it will need. And so we're quite happy about these approaches. And I think it'll mitigate a lot of the issues that we've seen on other platforms. So, Bitcoin started out being non-Turing complete, and then Ethereum iterated and it introduced Solidity, which is Turing complete. But it runs into all these issues that I talked about previously. And so we don't allow, various different compiled languages. We just have one language that we call Clarity. And that's the source code that you write is exactly what is run. There's no compilation step. There's no re-entrant functions, which has been one of the biggest issues in smart contracting world. There's no batching of transactions, which really simplifies things and really mitigates a lot of unintended side effects. And really, yeah, just trying to eliminate a lot of these causes of some of the major concerns in Ethereum and other languages. And so, as I said, it's not live quite yet. We're working on building out the test net right now, but we already have a developer preview. So you can already write smart contracts in Clarity, and then you can use our SDKs to test them, to run them, to see how they work. And soon we'll have a test net that you can run on, and then soon in 2020, they'll arrive on the mainnet. So that's mainly Blockstack as a whole. I think I'll pass it back to Zan now. He'll wrap up about the platform, and then we'll get into some of those questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Hank. And we see those questions coming through. I think there's some good ones, and they're ones we actually get a lot because, again, I think the way that we are designed is quite a bit different from other projects in the space. And happy to kind of get into that subsequently. But briefly, I want to cover, now that Hank has kind of gone through how to build applications on top of Blockstack, what the current ecosystem looks like of independent projects built on top of Blockstack. This slide is actually already out of date. We're starting to see the last 3-4 months have been really exciting for me in terms of the amount of application growth we've seen from independent teams. That says 150 plus. I think we're approaching 200 now. And all of those logos you see down there on the slide, those are not made up. I'm not that good in Sketch. Those are all real logos that you can actually go and check out. I believe there's a link at the end of the presentation, but app.co, you can see and try for yourself all the applications built on top of us. And what's really cool there is the majority of those applications we've really seen get built in recent, the last 3-4 months, as I mentioned. And the reason why we've started to see this explosion of app growth, I really believe, is because of the unique opportunity that we currently offer for developers who are even a little bit interested in this space. That opportunity is really made up of 3 parts. The first is education. This right here, this webinar is a perfect example of that. We do a lot of these webinars. We also do some of these ourselves. We have tutorials and other educational resources that enable someone to very quickly learn how to build on top of Blockstack. One of our tutorials, actually called Zero to DApp, takes a developer from a standing start to having built their first application on top of Blockstack in about an hour, which is pretty amazing. Once you've learned the basics of building on top of Blockstack and built, maybe your first little proof of concept application, you can then enter one of the hackathons or online contests that we hold to kind of put your newfound skills to the test. We actually have one ongoing right now called the Can't Be Evil contest. It's actually part 2. We did part 1 earlier this summer. And that has some really cool prizes, as well as some really cool categories for types of applications to build if you don't necessarily have an initial idea. After building an application, or maybe for the contest, or simply something that solves a problem you have, the opportunity doesn't really end there. What's really exciting is this program we have called app mining. At a high level, app mining is our developer incentive program. Every month, a set of independent reviewers ranks applications that are built using Blockstack, and we pay out funds across all those applications depending on the rankings. The program has been in the pilot phase since this past December. For the past 8 or might be 9 months now, we've paid out $100,000 in Bitcoin across all applications. And recently, I believe August this month will be the first, we're actually starting to scale the program up in terms of payments until it reaches its full scaled version, which will be in May 2020, when it will be paying out $1 million equivalent in Stacks tokens every month. App mining not only pays out rewards, but it gives developers the information needed to improve their applications. The goal of app mining is to reward quality applications, and it does so by ranking those that are high quality to begin with, but also through some of our app reviewers like Try My UI, a user testing platform, gives developers the information they need to refine their apps, get early users, and try and find early signs of product market fit. And so if you're even a little bit interested in this space, I really think this is an opportunity that it almost doesn't make sense to not take advantage of, because you can very quickly learn how to build an application on top of Blockstack. There's a number of fun ways, including the Can't Be Evil contest series, where you can kind of put your skills to the test and build that very first version of your application. And then you can continually get rewarded for what you've built through app mining, and get increasingly rewarded the more you improve your app. And so with that, as I mentioned, we're happy to take questions. These are just some of the other ways you can get involved. We are an open source project, and would love kind of any contributions as far as that goes. Those are also some of the links to our white papers, our community, as well as where the kind of community communication goes on. With that, we can start answering questions, and I see there's a couple in here, so I'm just going to start with Edgar's. He asks, "Hi, can you tell us more about the STO you were working on?" So I want to be really clear here. This is not an STO. It is a utility token. The SEC agrees with us it's a utility token. It is a special designation in the US for a utility token that is being issued through the Regulation A offering. And so because it is being issued through Regulation A, Blockstack PBC is going to report to the SEC as if the token was a security, but it's not, and it's not an STO. Daniel, I know you've been collecting them. I think maybe it's easy if we also just kind of go up the chat, and then any we miss, if you can let us know. But Hank, maybe this one's for you. And I'm guessing this is around the smart contracting language. Is it, Oscar asks, is it C++, Solidity, Graphene, what language?
Yeah, so Clarity is a Lisp-based language. And the reason we chose that is because, again, we do not have a compilation step at our on our smart contract layer. All those other languages you listed require compilation, and we feel that that's, you know, a negative thing for a lot of the reasons that I expressed earlier. So the answer is it's a Lisp-based language. And then I'd like to get back to some of the questions that Oscar asked earlier. So the mining algorithm. So we call it progressive proof of work. So at the beginning, we're actually using a relatively new method called proof of burn. And so this allows us to leverage the security of the Bitcoin network, which of course has a very high hash rate and is very secure from over a decade of mining. And so at the beginning, you essentially prove your work by burning Bitcoin, and this allows you to gain access to become essentially to mine blocks. Now, over time, this will shift to proof of work. So at the beginning, proof of work is going to be a small part of our consensus algorithm, and over time, we intend to shift to completely proof of work. And it's really about the security, because if we started out with just proof of work, we feel that the essentially hash rate wouldn't be high enough just at the very start to have the security that we want. So we're going to start with this proof of burn with a little bit of proof of work. And then, as I said, it's tunable. So we can shift the consensus layer or the consensus mechanisms later to move fully to proof of work. Then your last question from before was, do you use gas? Who's paying for the computing power? So it's somewhat similar to gas in that to execute a smart contract, you have to pay with Stacks, which is the cryptocurrency that is on the Stacks blockchain. So you use Stacks, and the difference from gas is that it's a deterministic fee. So unfortunately, with Ethereum, when you execute a smart contract, there's no set in stone gas amount that you're going to be required to use. Now, there are ways to estimate the amount of gas you'll need, but it's not certain. So because we have a non-Turing complete language and some other reasons, we're able to create a fee that everyone from a client to a node can agree upon that's fixed. Determining on exactly what smart contract you're executing. But the answer is it's kind of a gas type of thing and paid with Stacks.
Awesome, thanks, Hank. And there's just a previous question from Alejandro. Is Gaia able to store JSON objects too? Yeah, Hank, if you can definitely go into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when it stores JSON objects, it stores them as a string. So there's not a queryability component where you can store whatever JSON you want and then say, hey, Gaia, fetch me all objects with this field being this value. And so, you can really only fetch data from a key. Now, there are some other methods for, keeping track of all of your data, both sort of offline or client side and on a server component. But the answer around Gaia is it's just a key value store, so you can absolutely store Gaia or JSON as a string. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you, Hank. I think we have another question from Ed Martinez.
So I think you got into this a little with that, Hank. There's another previous question from Oscar about if we can store images, videos on the blockchain at regular cost, which that may have been answered just kind of from going through how we're built.
Yeah. So the short answer to that is that we feel it's not good practice to store data on chain. So it's stored in the user's personal data locker, instead of being on chain.
Awesome, thanks, Hank. Jorge, there's actually a number of.
Yeah, we have Ed Martinez.
So Ed asks, is graphene in some way intended for integrations, especially for EOS? We have no plans to integrate with EOS, but I'll let Hank offer any more color there.
Not much to say. I mean, we don't have any integrations at the moment, nor is it something that we're working on. But of course, it's an open source platform, so users could contribute however they desire. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll also say there is I think a really nice benefit of our technology, authentication especially, is it's pretty flexible in terms of what you can use it with. We've seen folks create Ethereum applications that use our authentication, plug our authentication into centralized applications. And so it really is flexible in terms of how you can deploy it. Jorge asks, Solid versus Blockstack?
Yeah, I can hop into that. So Solid is pretty, it's comparable to Gaia on its own. Solid's really just the personal data locker aspect. And so we have a pretty similar offering from Gaia. Now, what I think really differentiates us is having the entire stack. So we have globally unique on-chain identity that you can use throughout other apps. We have really powerful SDKs that connect all of these dots together. We have a huge community of support. We, of course, have app mining, for example, on the incentive side to really help you, support you while you build your application. So I think the short answer there is, Solid is comparable in some ways to one aspect of our stack, but we really have all these different components. We package them in an easy-to-use, developer-friendly way, and I think it makes a big difference when you're looking to build a decentralized app. And I'm going to jump into these other more technical questions because Zan mentioned it at the beginning, but unfortunately I have to hop off in just a few minutes. I have other engagement, and so I apologize for that. But so one question is Blockstack identity versus DID for sovereign identity. So Blockstack identity is just one implementation of a DID, a decentralized identity. So we have a DID format where you can resolve the Blockstack type of DID to an actual Blockstack profile. So we work closely with the DID standards team. We've been involved with them for quite a few years now, and we're building our identity layer in a way that it's totally compatible. Another question was authentication integration for other distributed ledger tokens. Right now, again, what Blockstack is working on is really authentication, mechanisms for Blockstack applications. However, it's all open source. It's all, our wallet, essentially, our Blockstack browser, which is where you manage your identity and your keys. It's really just a keychain. So we have had integrations where people use Blockstack authentication with Ethereum and doing something like using your Blockstack keys to generate an Ethereum compatible key and then creating an Ethereum wallet out of that. So, in terms of current open source tools, I'm not sure if I have much to point you to, but, again, it's just a keychain, all open source and client side, so it's all very possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Hank. And Alejandro, I saw you also asked, what does a developer need to build an app with Blockstack? I put a link there that I think if anyone's interested, that'll actually get you to that tutorial I was mentioning. But if you know and you're familiar with building with JavaScript, that's really all you need to know to get started. Awesome. Hank, I know you have to run. I can stay on a couple more minutes, and I see there's just a couple other questions that I can run through. But Hank, thank you for that, and see you soon.
Thank you all.
So to finish,
We're gonna hop off. Yeah, if you want to reach out to me specifically, we have a Slack. I know Zan will mention this stuff, or I'm at Hanky on Twitter. I think it's in the slides earlier. But yeah, great talking to you, and I hope to hear from many of you soon.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks.
Thank you, Hank.
have a good one, Hank. So Jorge also asks more info about the implementation of the SEC compliant token. Can I build an SEC compliant token with your platform? So SEC compliance is nothing really on a technical level with the token. That's a legal process and a legal framework. And so, we don't necessarily, we don't provide that legal framework at all. In the future, when, as Hank mentioned, as we roll out smart contracts and the Stacks V2 version of our blockchain, one thing that will enable is the concept of application native chains, where similarly to how our token is a proof of burn off Bitcoin, an application that requires its own blockchain, and we're big believers that most applications do not require this, but you can imagine having something like CryptoKitties, a very heavy NFT style application, you would probably want that. And so you can actually leverage our system to do the same thing we do and burn our token to create your own application native token. Again, that says nothing towards SEC compliance, but that will be possible. And I also see a question regarding app mining. The only requirement is to integrate Blockstack authentication to be eligible. So on a technical level, that is the minimum required in terms of what we define as an app that uses Blockstack. The way that the program ranks applications is if your application is only using authentication but is storing all of the user data just like a Web 2.0 application today, just like Facebook does, that's going to be ranked a lot lower because it doesn't really deliver on the promise of Web 3 or the decentralized web. There are other requirements to be eligible for app mining, and I encourage everyone to go to app.co/mining. You can find all the requirements there as well as all of the information about the program. There's really quite a lot. We spent a lot of time setting up the pilot, including partnering with game theorists from Princeton, NYU, and MIT not MIT, I believe Cornell, to create a technical white paper for the game theory of how the program runs and how the rankings actually occur. So definitely recommend you check that out if you're interested in the program. Oscar asks about transactions per second. Again, transactions per second is for most apps isn't really a relevant metric for us because you're going to be using the token to register digital assets as well as execute smart contracts. And the scope of those are quite a bit more limited in our world. You can definitely recommend reaching out to us on our forum and Slack to dig into that a little more if you'd want. But the second part of you guys planning to launch a DEX or SEX, so we are really working on the underlying protocol. We certainly have created a wallet for Stacks, but any DEX or centralized exchange support is going to come from outside partners or similar to how we have applications building on top of us today, folks that want to build those things, and we very much welcome that. And yeah, I think that's all the questions I saw, Daniel, unless you saw any that I missed.
No, that's all the questions I saw too. I don't know if anybody has any other questions.
No, I can't hear you now, Daniel.
Oh, wow.
Got it. Yeah, Oscar. To get more information about the transactions per second, if you go, I'll put a link in here. If you go to our forum and ask that question and tag Jude Nelson, he's the core engineer that's building that. He'll be able to get you a full answer on that, and there may even be one there already. But yeah, thank you for the question.
Can you hear me now, Sean?
I can.
Perfect. Now, I don't see any other questions. I do have another question for you, Sean. If you can go a little bit deeper on app mining. For example, I know you're giving 100K at the moment. Is that going to increase?
Yeah, you might have missed this, Daniel, but yeah, as I mentioned, this month, starting in August, we're actually increasing that. There is a blog post that details what that increase is going to look like, but the program is going to scale between now and May 2020, all the way up until the point that it is paying $1 million per month in Sdks tokens. And I just put a link to the blog post there that has the full schedule of how we're scaling that. And that begins this month by, in August, we'll be paying out $100,000 again in Bitcoin, as well as $100,000 in Sdks tokens. And there's a schedule in that blog post.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Marco, I don't know if you have any questions for Sean.
Not for me, but we can go to the polls. Camila, ¿nos podrías ayudar con los sondeos? We have a couple of questions to the audience. La primera, considera que se desarrolló con claridad el objetivo del webinar. Ayúdenos contestando si les pareció que fue fluido y que se desarrolló claramente. Y después les mandaremos otra pregunta más.
Perfecto.
En un momento. Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean, for your presentation.
Hey, I want to say, thank you to everyone that showed up. Thank you to Marco and everyone at BAM. This has been an absolute pleasure to do. And thank you, Daniel, for originally connecting us to BAM and helping organize all of this. This is an absolute pleasure to do. I am also going to throw my email into the chat here. And if anyone has any questions or just wants to brainstorm any of that, I'm also, that's my Twitter. Feel free to reach out to me. I love doing this. I love talking to people about what we're doing. And it's folks like you who are interested in taking the technology we've built and actually building valuable things with it that users love and that add value and better security and privacy to their lives that I think really matter. We increasingly live in a world where privacy and ownership really don't exist in the digital world. And so it's folks like yourselves that are helping us fight back against that. So I want to say thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Have a good one.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you, Daniel. Ahora pasaremos a español para toda la audiencia. Tenemos un bonus donde les vamos a explicar cómo vivir la experiencia de crear una aplicación de Blockstack y que ganen un bono de $50. El primer bono o lo primero que tienen que hacer es desarrollar una app siguiendo las reglas de Blockstack. Les voy a pasar el link donde explica exactamente cómo, como las preguntas frecuentes. Si tienen alguna duda al respecto de cómo subir una app a la aplicación de web de Blockstack, ahí van a seguir paso por paso. Después, una vez que hayan subido su aplicación a la plataforma de Blockstack, tienen que subirla al App Mining. ¿Ok? Tienen hasta el 29 de agosto del 2019. Voy a ponerles como paso 1.
Sí, y todo esto va a ser enviado también por email, si no me equivoco, Marcos, para que también tengan esta información.
Sí, se los vamos a mandar por mail. Paso 1, tienen que desarrollar su app siguiendo las reglas de Blockstack. Después, paso 2, tienen hasta el 29 de agosto para crear la aplicación y subirla al App Mining. Y aquí es muy importante para que les podamos dar los $50 de bonus, que como ya saben también Blockstack les da un bonus o les da una recompensa por incentivarlos para que suban las aplicaciones a su propia plataforma. También este bonus de $50 se los está dando extra Blockchain Academy México. Lo único que tienen que hacer, y para que nosotros nos aseguremos de que efectivamente asistieron al webinar y que lo están dando por esta recomendación, es que pongan BAM en la pregunta cuando se estén registrando, como cómo se enteraron de app.co o el App Mining. ¿Okay? Eso también viene en el siguiente link que pueden ver a continuación. Y por último, una vez que ya hayan hecho el registro, hayan puesto que se registraron con el código de referidos de BAM o de Blockchain Academy, tienen que mandar la confirmación con un screenshot o con ahí algo que compruebe que ya se registraron y que ya pusieron el código a contacto@blockchainacademy.mx. Eso es lo único que tienen que hacer. Desarrollen su aplicación en cualquier lenguaje, lo suben al App Mining, se registran, ponen el código de referido y después nos mandan eso, y con eso ya tienen los $50. Cuando se les van a entregar los bonos, ahorita les vamos a decir, faltan 2 preguntas del sondeo más, así que también ayúdenos respondiendo la siguiente pregunta que les va a aparecer a continuación. Si asistirían a otro webinar de Blockchain Academy, sí o no. Y la siguiente, que también les va a aparecer a continuación, ayúdenos respondiendo esta otra pregunta. Ok, bueno, les va a aparecer a continuación la siguiente pregunta. ¿Cuándo y cómo se va a entregar el bono? El bono de $50 se va a entregar una semana después de que recibas la recompensa que Blockstack te da. Ok, sí. Blockstack hace el corte cada mes, entonces una vez que ya pasa esa recompensa o ese mes, nosotros les damos el nuestro, los $50 extras. ¿Algo que quieras agregar, Daniel?
Sí, entonces, por ejemplo, si ustedes ponen la aplicación en agosto 29, Blockstack, si no me equivoco, les va a dar la recompensa de App Mining, les va a dar el 30 de septiembre. Nosotros estaríamos mandando los $50 una semana después de eso.
Aquí les estoy poniendo también el link del calendario para que se enteren de cuándo reciben la recompensa. Que prácticamente, pues, Blockstack no está dando los bonos todos los días, hace un corte de mes con mes y una vez que ya reciben el bono, se les emite el bono de $50 por Blockchain Academy México. Por eso es importante que pongan que vienen de parte de Blockchain Academy México cuando se registren en Blockstack, para que tengan el doble bono. ¿Tienes alguna pregunta extra? Bueno, escríbenos a contacto@blockchainacademy.mx, también escríbenos por Facebook, escríbenos por Twitter, escríbenos en la página, mándanos un correo y asiste a nuestros meetups, asiste a nuestros webinars, también por ahí nos puedes escribir. Te puedes unir al Slack, te puedes unir al Telegram, te puedes unir al WhatsApp. Ya, ahorita no hay ninguna excusa de que no tengamos contacto y comunicación entre la comunidad. Si alguien tiene alguna duda o algún comentario, lo puede escribir ahorita en el chat. Si no, pues creo que podríamos ir para cerrar este webinar. Muchas gracias a todos por haber asistido a su primer webinar de introducción a Blockstack. Y les dejo de nuevo el correo y las redes sociales de Blockchain Academy México. Síganos en Twitter como @Blockdemy. También denos like en Facebook. Y también pasen a la página de Daniel. Deja tus datos de Eco-Intelligent Solutions para que también te sigan y se registren contigo.
Sí, me pueden
Ahí
contactar
están las redes sociales de Daniel.
Eco-Intelligent Solutions o a Dan Paramoe, que es mi Twitter personal.
De todas formas, les vamos a mandar toda la información del bonus y de cómo irse registrando paso por paso. Seguramente seguiremos haciendo algunas otras actividades con Blockstack. Próximamente tendremos ahí algún hackathon, alguna actividad en línea. Entonces, por ahora, lo que pueden hacer es irse documentando e ir aprendiendo cómo subir aplicaciones a Blockstack para que estén preparados para las siguientes actividades que vendrán a final de año aproximadamente. Pues muchas gracias a toda la comunidad por haber asistido y que pasen muy buen resto de semana.
Sí. Muchas gracias a todos. Gracias, Marco.
Gracias, Daniel. El webinar se los estaremos mandando, yo creo, en el transcurso de la semana, a lo mejor como por el viernes, o falta que se termine de editar y se los mandamos inmediatamente. ¿Va? Muchas gracias, Nadia, y muchas gracias, Alejandro.
Muchas gracias.